A common guitar argument is whether acoustic or electric guitar is harder, and sometimes which one is better. And really, there's a few factors to take into consideration to figure out which one's harder and which one might be better for just starting out on guitar. And the final answer is not going to be exactly what you think. To determine which side of the guitar is harder, we're going to be looking at how the strings move according to your fingers and how you push them. Is it easy, difficult, smooth, not smooth? The relative difficulty when you get into actually how you play more acoustically and how you play more electric, which one is actually more difficult when in the specific style, and of course, is one quicker to learn than the other in their specific styles. Beginner guitar phase on each instrument, and then possible sounds you can make, which one gives you more freedom, and then of course, the big dollar sign. To start, we're going to figure out which of the two is actually harder to play once you get into real technique. On electric, if your action, as long as it's reasonable, it is going to be way easier to get these into the fretboard, making hammer-ons, bends, etc. way more easy to do and way more smoother sounding at a lower skill level. While on acoustic, the strings are often further off the neck or harder to press down. And of course, when we factor this in, they are harder to bend on accurately, and hammer-ons are going to find you at around the same difficulty, but through an amp and through gain on an electric guitar, these sounds are a lot more clear than when you play them on acoustic. So the difficulty is closer than most people think, but because the electric picks it up better, it is obviously just amplified better through an amp. And now we're really going to factor in the specific style. On acoustic, people tend to bias those open chords a lot more, and they sound better, while holding bar chords is usually less conventional, and the use of a capo is pretty common. And on acoustic, especially on ones like these, you don't see a lot of super high pitch action, and instead you really see stuff done in the A minor, B minor, C minor, pentatonic kind of area, which means acoustic usually has less fretboard space that is actively being used, and a lot more stress on chords and making those kind of acoustic slaps. And people that get really advanced do some crazy Tourette kind of thing on the body of the guitar. And of course, electric, we do see quite a bit of action on the high strings while still seeing a lot in this mid-range of the neck, and bar chords are a lot more common. And since people usually bias towards open chords on acoustic because they just sound better, the bar chord part of electric is harder, even though the strings are easier, and playing really high up here and getting full sound and getting nice sound is very difficult compared to everywhere else on the neck. So the relative difficulty, especially once you get into learning songs, most acoustic songs are going to be easier than songs that are primarily electric, just due to the general playing style, which makes the string movement on electric maybe slightly easier, but not really. It's just how amp picks things up. The relative difficulty, electric will be harder, and quickness to learn the respective styles, learning how to do stuff up here and being more melodic versus just learning chords and more basic things that you also have to learn in the mid-range of this neck. It just gives a little more depth to the electric guitar, meaning the quickness to learn it in that style is often a little slower. But since electric is harder, could it still be the best guitar to start? And to answer this question, the first thing we're going to look at what is better for one-year results. For anyone that really has played on either, you'll notice the way that these acoustic strings are, being just slightly more difficult, more slightly raised, having a usually slightly higher action, we can infer that they are harder, but that actually makes them better for this first year, because a higher string action requires you to use more force in your fingers and is really going to develop your calluses and finger strength, so you're not a little bitch when you start playing more and more guitar. And of course, better long-term results. When you get to the long term, you have both. It really is going to even out no matter what you do. But if you're like me and you started on electric and neglected acoustic for a while, you have this weird learning curve. So I'd really recommend starting with acoustic, because the learning curve from electric to acoustic is harder than acoustic to electric. And overall difficulty in that first year, all you're doing is playing mid-range and a lot of chord stuff. If you learn bar chords on this thing first, you're gonna be a fucking animal when you get to electric. So of course, this overall difficulty factored in, the acoustic being probably slightly harder, is actually going to be way better for starting and figuring out if you actually like the instrument. And of course, possible sounds, you have a little bit more on the electric due to tweaking knobs on the amp, but you're not going to have pedals, you're not going to have a great amp with too many settings, bells and whistles. So as far as possible sounds goes, you can really explore a lot more percussively on acoustic because you're not really going to have the best gain boosting tools on electric. So they're really just about going to even out. And cost wise, unless you get like Squire $250 startup pack, the acoustic is going to be cheaper and more simple. Because if you buy all the pieces on your own, you're going to get a guitar you like as long as you try them out, which is a great thing. But you know nothing about amps, and you're probably going to screw yourself over. And a quick side note on these guitar wires, if you get a name brand, what are you doing? Everything works, I swear to God, about the same from my experience. And if you just don't get a name brand, it's like half the price. And of course, acoustic, except for buying picks, one-time cost. You want to add on a capo for a little DLC action? Be my guest, all up to you. So factoring everything in, the harder guitar to play in its respective styles and how it's usually represented musically is going to be the electric due to more diversity and more emphasis on lead parts over open chords. But the acoustic is the champion for starting your guitar journey. It's going to make the learning curve from here to here very minimized, and it's going to give you nice introductory skills. And if you think, well, I'd rather be electric, I want to sound great on lead, that's perfectly fine. Starting on electric isn't going to do anything, because if you remember, over the long term, these better one-year results and everything don't matter too much. But if you don't really know where you stand on guitar, do not even think about getting electric. One, because it's also just going to piss off whoever you live with. But two, the acoustic, you can also bring it around everywhere, which is also a hidden benefit to long-term growth and really only deciding factor that could give acoustic an edge. And of course, if you found this video helpful, subscribe for more simple guitar content, and comment down below if you agree on which one is harder and if the acoustic is actually the supreme starter guitar.